Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Nigel with you. This is number 11 now in the beginner series of the build. Well, not a build, is it? It's beginner series. And this one today is going to be all about paint chipping. It's by request. Now this is the second time I've done this, which is why you can see paint on my hands, because it all went wrong the first time. So I'm using a fresh piece of plastic. This is actually the lower wing section from a Revell Spitfire Mark II. And it is the it's very reasonably priced. It's not a very nice kit though. I may actually use this. The fuselage is all out of shape and the engine covers are horrible, but I may actually use this as a video build, because I've for a long time wanted to do a video on how not to build a model airplane and make loads of mistakes. So we'll see. But I'm going to use this today for showing you some chipping. So I've got a fresh piece of plastic that I can prime, paint, and then we can do some chipping. So the first thing to do is clean the plastic. If your plastic's not clean and you start chipping and stuff, you run the risk of lifting the paint from the plastic when you start chipping. So I'm going to take some of this Tamiya X20A. I'm just going to rub it over the surface and just remove any nasty greeblies or anything that's on there. There we go, that's that done. You could use IPA, you could wash your sprues in soap and water, but if you just want to do it quickly, just do that. And it's a good idea as well, if you've built a model and it's all done, ready for primer, it's a good idea to do that way, because you've been handling it and building it and sanding it and everything. So what we're going to do now is make sure the paint gets a good key. So I'm going to use MRP Fine Surface Primer Black. The reason I'm using black is because I'm going to paint it silver, and black is a great primer for silver. And the reason I'm painting it silver is what I'm going to do is use a variation of different coloured paints and thinners and show you chipping. And the idea is we're going to chip through to the aluminium. So it's going to look like it's an aluminium wing that's been painted all different colours and then chipped. And we're not trying to build a model, I'm just using this as a demonstration. So airbrushing techniques, paint finishes, all of that is completely out the window. It doesn't matter. This is all about chipping. So as I say, the first thing I'll do is give it a coat of primer. I'll let that dry for about an hour, and then I'll give it a coat of LP70. And for this, I'll thin it roughly 50-50. I'll probably use this one actually, the Tamiya Lacquer Thinner Retarder type. Probably use this one, and then get that down. And then after that's been down for about an hour, I'll give it a coat of LP9 Clear, just a thin coat. And the reason I do that is this stuff dries absolutely rock hard and it will just seal it in. One of the problems with chipping is sometimes you will find that you will start to rub the paint away from underneath. Okay, so basically the whole object of the idea here is to paint the colour that we want to chip through to. So if it's going to be like a tank or something, you might choose to use red oxide. You might choose to use that yellow colour primer that the Americans sometimes used on vehicles. You know, you might have different, so you might choose to use different colours so you can chip through to a, you might want to paint a camouflage scheme and then cover it with something else and chip through, like on a tornado that went to Iraq. You might want to paint it in the grey and green scheme, then hairspray it and then chip it. And then when you chip away the desert pink, you'll see the grey and green coming through. That's the whole object of the exercise. So it's degreased now. I'm going to go away and prime it. I'm not going to do any spraying on camera. As I say, this video is going to be about chipping, not painting. This is nothing to do with painting techniques. It's about using different products, but not how to use the different products. We could cover that in another time. So without further ado, I should go and get this primed, and then I'll get the silver down and I'll get that down. I may come back and show you after it's primed, because this stuff is lovely. Okay, you can see it's very thin. You use it directly from the bottle. It's really good. You get it from Premium Hobbies, and if you do want to get yourself some, don't forget to use the code NMB10, Nigel's Modelling Bench 10, and you'll get 10% off whatever you order. So I'll see you in a minute with this either black or silver. And there we are, guys. Now you can see why I rave about this stuff. It is absolutely gorgeous. Very nice indeed. So it's very thin, as you can hear, but you use it directly from the bottle, so you just pour it into your airbrush, spray it, whatever's left just goes straight back in the bottle. It's no issue. These are the older bottles. We've got 3 generations going on here. The bottles now are 50 millilitres, not 60. And I think they've changed because of the caps. They've had issues with caps. So this is what they have first of all, this flip up thing, which is bloody awful. Don't use it. You can see the mess around here. It sort of comes out and it doesn't run out. It kind of comes out and then capillaries around and just stays on the bottle. Well, surface tensions around, should I say. So that was that one. Then they changed it to this screw-on lid here. But now they've gone for the 50 millilitre bottle. So it's a squarer bottom. It'll still fit in the rack, I think. Yes, it will. So yeah, very nice indeed. So they're about £5.60 from Premium Hobby. So you're looking at about £5 with your 10% off, aren't you? So that's it's well worth it. It's very smelly. You do need a booth and a mask or window or whatever. But it's very, very nice paint. You can see, the finish is just unbelievable, and it's really, really hard wearing. It's the only primer paint that I know of that will withstand this. I think Mr. Surfacer will actually. I've done a video on it. You can go back and have a look about Deco setting solutions. But this stuff, nothing touches this. It's really, really resilient, and it's very, very hard wearing, and it doesn't scratch easily. It's beautiful, beautiful paint. They do all the colours, and nice colour match on them as well. They're really, really nice. I have actually got some Outlaw paints on the way from Australia at the moment to test out. So we'll see how they are as well. They're very similar. They come in a bottle, bigger bottle for the primer, direct into the airbrush spray. So also like these, they're very thin. But they may be better, they may be worse. I do not know. I will give you an honest opinion when they come. So there we go. So that's the black down. So I'll leave that for half an hour, and then I'll get some LP70 down mixed with the Tamiya lacquer thinner, and then I'll give that half an hour to dry, and then I'll give it a coat of LP9 gloss just to seal it in, just so we don't get anything going on. Now if you are doing your Tornado, say, and you have painted it green and grey, and then you want to paint chip it, then I would suggest whatever paint you've used, especially if you use Vallejo or something like that, I would suggest just a quick gloss coat just over it, just to make the chipping go easier, and it also seals in. It's like putting a cocoon around your model so that it's not going to get ruined, because if you start chipping the paint and it goes through to the plastic, it's a nightmare. So it'll prevent that. So anyway, let's get this silver paint down, and then I'll come back. And we're back. So it's been about 18 hours, and as you can see, the silver's gone on, the gloss has gone on, and it's all nice and dry. That mark there is where there was a hair, and I've just gouged it out. It's gone through to the black primer underneath, but we're not worried about that. We're not after, as I said before, this is not about achieving a finish. This is about showing you how to do chipping. So, the colours I use, the way I chip, where I chip, will all be completely unauthentic, if you like. Forget this is a Spitfire wing. Think it's a slab of plastic. So, so there we are. So we've now got our aluminium finish, and we've got it sealed in with some clear. As I say, the clear is not 100% necessary, but I thoroughly recommend it. I always do. So what we need to do now is apply the hairspray. Now, I learnt this off of Mike Rinaldi of Modelling Fame. He's a very, very talented modeller. And he always recommends this, Tresemme number 3. So this is the one I use because it's what he recommends. I got this one. Actually, my mum had this, and she didn't like it, so she threw it away. And luckily when she threw it away, I was at her house. I said, oh, I'll have that. I've tried it, and it doesn't seem to work as good. It doesn't let the paint come off as easily. So I've kept it, but I tend to not like using it. I'd rather use this one. Trouble is, this is so old now, it's lost all its pressure. When I push the nozzle, nothing comes out. So what I've got to do is hold the can upside down over my airbrush and decant it into there. So I can hold this. I'm using the Bart Sharp airbrush for no other reason than I've just cleaned it and I want to sort of get something through it. So I'm going to hold this here, and basically what will happen, I doubt you can see anything going on, but it's basically coming out. It's literally dripping. Try and get it to liven up a bit. Really what I need to do is cut this can open and decant it into a bottle. But okay, so we've got a nice volume of hairspray in there, and that's too much. We're going to wait. What I'll do is I'll put some in a jar. Actually, I'll probably decant it all into a jar. So all we're going to do, about 18 psi. Just do a quick test. Yeah, it's coming out absolutely fine. There's a 0.5 nozzle on this, so I've got to be a little bit careful. So what I'm going to do is just give this two pretty wet coats. So I want it to go down. You can't really put too much on as long as you don't try and paint over it too quick. If you try and paint over it too quickly, what I find happens is the paint all sort of cracks up. If it's an effect you want, it's something you could try. If you get a wet area, like that area there is wet, and paint it straight away, what happens is the paint goes down and it all sort of separates. So if you want to get that sort of burnt paint, like burnt on an exhaust manifold or something, if you're after that look, or cracked leather on a headrest, it could be a way of getting it. Something you'll have to play with. Okay, so that's one coat gone down, and this side is dry already, so I can go back in there, and I'm pretty much hosing this on. A nice decent coat to make sure it works. If you put it on too thinly, you'll struggle to make it work. It smells nice. I'm not sure if it's bad for you, this stuff. I mean, women put it on, I can't say that, can I now? Some people put it on every day. So it can't be a health risk, because otherwise there would be health warnings all over it. And there would be people dying as a result. And the government would charge you £12.50 a day to use it. Because it doesn't matter that it's bad to you as long as you pay for it. Isn't it, guys? Anyway. So that's that. I'm going to give this airbrush a clean out now with some tool cleaner, just run it through it and spray it back into the bottle. And that'll be that. So we've got our hairspray down, got a couple of nice wet coats on there. You can just leave it at that, and then I'll come back in about an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that, when it's dry, properly dried off, and then we'll do the painting. Right, so that's been about an hour, hour and a half. So that's dry. I can feel it's dry. It's not tacky or anything, so that's fine. And usually you can give it the smell check. If it doesn't smell too strong, obviously it's going to keep its smell, but if it doesn't smell too strong, it's generally sort of cured off. You don't want to leave it on there for days, because it probably won't work, as I found out to my dismay. But anyway, so we've got the wing here, and what we're going to do is we're going to put some bands of colour on there, and we're going to use different paints. So first of all, I'm going to use Tamiya XF, just any colour you can do, but I'm going to use JA Green, XF13 with X20A thinner, so that's a very soft, not hot acrylic thinner. So that'll be the first one we'll try. And then we'll get this XF63 German grey, mix it in with levelling thinners, because often the question is asked, I've asked the question of people myself, you know, should I use this or should I use the X20A? Everyone always says use the X20A. Let's see if this works. Then I'm going to try some LP. This is LP18 dull red, and this is you can see I've written on here air. That's pre-thinned with Mr. Colour levelling thinners, or it'll be the Tamiya lacquer thinners, one or the other, but it'll be a lacquer thinner, and we'll see if that works. I don't think it will at all. Then we got the Humber enamel. So I've got matte 66 here, which is a grey colour, or like an olive green grey, I'm not sure what colour it is, but this paint is probably about 42 to 48 years old, something like that. So there we go. It's Humber paint is amazing for brush painting, and it just lasts forever. So as long as you keep the tins nicely sealed. And then we're going to thin that with Humber enamel thinners, and we'll spray that on through the airbrush. And then we've got here, just to try out, an MRP US Hilo Drab. This is a beautiful paint. It's one of the hardest wearing paints I know of. It's one of the only paints that will withstand having this put on it. If you use this Tamiya Mark Fit Super Strong to cure your decals, to set your decals down, that will dissolve most paints. It will dissolve all of them. I don't think it dissolves the LP, but it dissolves the others, so be very careful. But it won't dissolve that one. And it's also the MRP primers. You get these from Premium Hobbies. If you want to get some, use the code NMB10. As I said, with the primer I used on here, absolutely wonderful stuff. Really, really nice. So that's what we're going to do. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different colours. We've got 300 millimeters wide, so we've got roughly 50 millimeter wide bands for each one. So what we'll do is we will grab some masking tape and we will mask off 50 millimeter wide bands. So there's 50 there. The tape's going to run out now. And there's 50 millimeters. What I need to do is swap that around, because I made that too long. So 50 millimeters there, and then 50 millimeters there. Okay, I'll get some new masking tape out and I'll continue to do that. Okay, that's done. So, as I say, we're not after perfection here. This isn't a tutorial about painting, masking, mixing paints or anything like that. It's just about chipping. So we'll have XF13 plus X20A there. Okay, and then here we'll have XF63 plus Mr. Colour Leveling Thinners, and then here we'll have LP18 Mr. Colour Leveling Thinners, and then here we'll have the enamel, and then the on the end here we'll have MRP. Okay, so I'm 99.9% sure the MRP and the enamel won't work at all. I don't think that one's going to work either, the LP18. This one will work, this one might, but we shall see. But for those of you that have never tried paint chipping, I know I've been asked to do this video, so I'm sure at least one person out there is going to find it useful. So, and also my last video I did on scribing, I need to remake that. It's bloody awful. I'm sorry guys, I do need to remake it. It's awful. So I will be doing redoing something with that. Right, so I'm going to get this all painted. As I say, it's not a painting tutorial, so I'll do it all off camera, and when you come back it will be painted and the paint will have been down for a couple of hours, let it dry out, and then we'll do some chipping. So I'll see you in probably about 3 hours for me and about a split second for you. There we are guys, all painted. I haven't had the proper drying time yet, I've only literally just finished, but I have had a slight change of plan. I said I was going to do this end panel here with MRP. I know for a fact you can't chip MRP. Okay, as I said, this is the second time I've done this video, and here was my first attempt, and it all went a bit pear-shaped. But I know that you cannot. I mean, you can hardly even scratch it. I mean, you can scratch it with a sharp point, but it takes the paint off below. MRP is not really suitable for paint chipping like this with hairspray. So what I've done, I've got some, anybody want to guess why I've got this colour out? Intermediate Blue 56, and I've done something I've never done before. I've thinned it with water. It says here, you can see it on the side of the jar, it says water to thin. I've never tried it. I've spoken to people that have, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to do it again because there is no smell, and as you can see it goes down beautifully. You still need chemicals to clean your airbrush up. You can't, once it's dry, water won't touch it, which is good, which means we can probably put decals on it. We'll try that. But this is going to sort of go into another realm of modelling. But so we can see here we've got the Mr. Hobby Aqueous. It's not the C, it's the H. Mr. Hobby Aqueous. So it's H56. If you see a Mr. Hobby with a C on it, like I've got here, Mr. Unprepared. Okay, so this is Mr. Colour. Okay, that is a lacquer paint. That's like your Tamiya LPs. That's a lacquer paint. It needs to be the H, and it has to have aqueous written on it. There have been various different labels over the years. You can see there's a different one there as well. You see, there's different labels over the years. But, the aqueous thins water and sprays absolutely beautifully. So it's also got a slight sheen to it, so it's probably okay for decals to go straight on it. As I say, we can test that. So in fact we'll test it out when we do the PBY. So there we are. We'll give that as I said, we'll give it a couple of hours to dry, and then we'll come back and see how it looks, how it chips and everything. But nice finish on and everything. But as I say, this is not a test in how to paint. But what is really amazing, it's not a test in how to paint. It's basically a scrap part of a model. And you know I don't always get hairs, don't I? I don't think there's a single hair in any of that. So, just my bloody luck. Right, so as I say, I'll be back in a minute. Here we are. A couple of hours have gone by, so this should be ready to go now. So, as I said earlier, we've got XF13 with X20A Tamiya thinners. We've got XF63 with leveling thinners. We've got LP18 with leveling thinners. We've got a Humbrol Enamel 66 with enamel thinners. And here we've got Mr. Hobby with water. So we're going to see how they chip. So all we need is water, a couple of brushes, and a cocktail stick, and maybe a pointed tool of some sort. So all we're going to do is just wet an area. Okay, so we'll wet an area here and let the water just get absorbed into the paint, absorbed into the paint. And what will happen is the water will absorb into the paint, and then when it gets to the hairspray will dissolve and allow the paint to come away from what's underneath. Now, if you do it too quick, the action is like it just comes off, like you put a paint stripper on there. If you leave it too long, it won't come off. So, and if you haven't put enough hairspray on, it won't come off. So it's very difficult to see what's going on. But here you can see I'm just gently rubbing this with a brush. And you can see there the paint has come away. I'm sorry guys, I have to zoom the camera in and then keep an eye on things, because the trouble is when it's wet we get reflections from the light and you may not be able to see what I'm doing. So we'll keep you zoomed in. I'll keep you here, right, so roughly there, alright. So you can see there that we've got the silver paint. Let me wipe that water away. We've got the silver paint showing through. So if you wanted to do something like a cockpit floor that's worn, you could do that. If you want to do an area on a wing that they've been walking on to change guns, you can do that. But if you want to actually chip it, so here you, and if you just keep rubbing, you can see that more and more paint will come away, and you end up with, like you can see there, we've got, now that looks just like where the pilot's foot, sorry guys, I keep forgetting I'm zoomed in. That was just like where the pilot's foot might be rubbing along the floor. I'll just keep it on the bench and you can see what's going on. So, and you can just keep going. If you want to achieve a chipped look, what do is just moisten that again and just dry it off. And you can see here we've got these raised details, and I keep doing it, sorry. You've got these raised details and I'm just rubbing the paint off of there. If we want to achieve a chipped look like on these panels here, okay, we can come along with a cocktail stick and just tap the paint on the edges, and as you can see the paint is coming away. So we can just chip the paint away from the edges. If you want to get finer chips, you can use a tiny pointed tool, and as you can see the paint is just coming away. Now that area there is probably a little bit too wet, so what you would do now is leave it to dry out a bit and then come back. This area here has had no water on it at all, and as you can see I'm tapping it the same and nothing is happening. So if I just dampen that area and dry it off, just get it damp, not wet, now you can see we get the chipping effect we want. So if you start chipping and it all just starts coming off too easily, just wait, leave it, let it dry, and it will be easier. If you find you can't chip at all, wet it, leave it, wet it, leave it. If you still can't chip it, you need to start again, because unfortunately you've left it too long, or you don't have enough hairspray on there, which is I think what happened on my original sample that I showed you just now with the MRP. So you can see there we can chip into the corner, just literally I'm just touching the paint, and you're getting tiny little chips. Like imagine that was a panel or something there. Okay, so over here you can see we've had no water, I'm touching it, nothing's happening. I'll put some water on this square panel here, and now I just touch it and it chips. So we can go along the edge and okay, so that's what chipping's all about. If you want to start putting scratches on, like something's been scratched, then you just literally scratch. Just like so. Okay, so it's that simple. So let's see what happens if you've used Mr. Colour leveling thinners. So we'll get some water on here, we'll wet this area here, and as you can see straight away the paint is not porous, it's not soaking in like it did over there. So it's going in slightly, I can see it's slightly changing the colour, but I don't think it's going to work very well. Doesn't seem to be doing anything at all. But the one good thing with chipping is, if you can make it more resistant, the harder it is to chip, the more realistic you can get. If it just comes off straight away as soon as you touch it, it's awful. It looks like it's just had thinners rubbed over it. But there we go, this is actually working now. This is chipping. So I'm wondering if I can get the brush to give me a worn effect. This is actually a lot nicer because, as you can see, I'm doing a lot more work to get the same effect, which is what you want. You want to be working harder because, as I say, if it just all comes off too easily, then there we could use a smaller brush. Let's get some water on there. You don't want to be using your best brushes for this. You can use a smaller brush, and as you can see, I'm kind of scratching it off. And that's giving us that sort of worn out look. Yeah, hopefully you can see that without too much reflection from the water. And again, if you want to do some scratches, just scratch. We can do some chipping into the corners, do some chipping on that panel there. So yeah, it works really well. You can see I can tap this over here, nothing happens. Tap it over here, the paint comes off. Nothing there. Here the paint comes off. So again, we can go around, and it doesn't. I mean, I'm putting loads of chips in there. It doesn't have to be that many. It could just be a few, just to sort of, you know, do the leaning edge and stuff like that. You wouldn't get the thing completely, unless it's Japanese, where they didn't use primers and stuff, I don't think, and the paint just fell off them, didn't it? I mean, they ended up with things that were practically bare metal, if you look at some of them. So that's the XF63 with the Mr. Colour leveling thinners, and it appears to work absolutely fine. We're not going through to the grey plastic, we're not damaging the silver paint because we've got the clear coat on there. I think the toothpick is a bit too coarse for this. So I think best stick to something pointed. Don't go gouging in there because you'll go through to the silver paint. You're just literally touching the surface. And as you can see now, it's starting to dry out. So it's becoming a bit harder to chip, I think. There we go. Let's see if we can achieve a worn patch look. Maybe the cocktail stick. What you can do is, if you've got a really old brush and you can cut the end off so the bristles are literally about 3mm long, that makes a great brush for scrubbing to get your rudder pedal look. I don't have one that I want to do that to at the moment, so I don't really want to try that out. But I think you know what I mean. Just, yes, I will do it actually. I have to, don't I? I can't not do it. Where's a knackered brush? I must have a really knackered brush here somewhere. This one's pretty bad. Let's cut these bristles down to just about sort of 3mm long, and then just get it wet. You can see I can sort of scrub it. Yeah, that's not working so well, you see. It's not coming off very easily, but as you can see, we can get this kind of worn look on it. There we go. So and this will probably work really well on this one over here. There we go. As you can see, it's coming off a little bit too easy there. We're not getting the nice soft effect, so we'll go back to the softer brush. To soften up those edges. There you go. And there you are. Right, so that's that. I wonder if the LP works. I don't think it will for a minute, but we shall see. What we'll do is we'll wet an area there. I could have done smaller bands, couldn't I? We'll just wet this area here, see what happens. As you see again, the water's not really going in. Another way to test this is to rub it over an edge. If the paint's going to come off, it'll come off on the edge. And it doesn't look like it's going to at all. Let's give it a go with this little scrubbing brush. As you can see, nothing. So don't use your LP paints for chipping, it won't chip. It might well scratch, but no, it's not done. As you can see there, it's not affected it at all, so don't bother. Now the enamels, this is the Humbrol enamel. Again, this has been down for about 2 hours now. Enamels take a lot longer to dry, so it's not really fully cured, but we'll see how it goes. I'd forgotten how nice enamel was to spray. You can see it's absorbing the water, so that's a good thing. So the water's being absorbed, which means it will soak through and get to the hairspray, and that's what we need. We need the hairspray to get wet so it lets the paint go. And it's actually working, look at that. See if we can get a... This is my little stibbly brush I'm using here. And you can see that is lovely. That's a really nice worn effect there. You know, like where the foot's been rubbing down or an arm's been rubbing down or something. Or like the base of a seat. That's a really nice effect. So yeah, that's working really well. It won't work with a gloss because obviously the gloss won't be porous, but it's working with the matte. So yeah, that's really nice, and for chipping I think it's going to be lovely. Let's give it a go. Yep, very nice indeed. So if you want to use enamels, then you can, but in a minute I'm going to be talking about oil washes again, because people have been asking me about that. I'm just going to tag it onto the end of this video because a lot of people don't seem to understand the concept about enamels and acrylics and which way around they go and everything. So I'm going to show you. So yeah, that's really, really nice. That chips beautifully. I wonder if I've got a Humbrol interior green. I think I have. Be nice. Be lovely in cockpits, that will. So there we are, so that's that one. So I'm going to turn it over just for ease of holding it. And this is the Mr. Hobby now with the thinned with water. So let's see what happens here. Now we can see that the water is not penetrating the surface at all. I don't think it's going in at all. But we shall see. We'll just keep going at it. As you can see, the difference is when I put water on the enamel, look, it just goes in and it just soaks in. You can see we've got a dark patch there now where it's gone in, whereas with this, it's not going in at all. I'm not sure if it's going to chip. Let's give it a scrub. It's the kids on their way home from school, all excited because it's their last day of term, I think. Yep, that's working absolutely lovely. So yeah, your interior greens, H58, mix it with water, you'll have a nice cockpit that will be easy to chip. Will it chip? By heck it will, lad. Look at that. So you get a nice chipped effect down the edge of that panel line. Really, really nice. Very happy with that. Very happy indeed. So, yes, it does work. I'm not sure if I kept on rubbing with this brush, if any paint would come off. Let's go over that scoop. You can see it's not letting it go like the Tamiya does. If I do the same thing here on the Tamiya, over that same scoop, watch, straight away we've got silver coming through on the corner. So I think the Tamiya paint is the way to go for ease of chipping. Tamiya paint with leveling thinners a bit tougher to work with. The Mr. Hobby with water seems to work. We're getting a bit of silver showing through, but it's nothing much. But you can actually, you can see we've got some little areas there that are coming off as well. And I could come in with a cocktail stick. I really don't like using that. I'd rather use this for the chipping, to be honest. Just scratch up that area there. There we are, you can see there. That's the effect. So basically, guys, what have we learned? What I've tried to do here is show you the hairspray chipping technique, which has been around for years. A lot of people haven't heard of it, but a lot of people have heard of it and not seen how it's worked. And there's also, I'm answering the question here, and I've proved myself wrong on a couple of occasions. I'm answering the question here, what can you use, what paints? So obviously LP doesn't work at all, and I know that if you want to use MRP, that doesn't work at all. But it would appear that the XF, the Tamiya matte paint with acrylic thinners is the way to go for the easy chipping. But you can use leveling thinners. Clearly it's worked. Enamels, lovely, that's really nice, that worn area there. And then the Mr. Colour thinned with water. The Mr. Colour thinned with this, I think, would be the same. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out again now, back up to where we normally are. Otherwise I'm just going to keep shoving things in your face, because I'm not used to it. I'm used to going like that. When the camera zoomed in, it's like that. So anyway, so yeah, that would work. If you mix those two together, it would work the same. But you may as well use water, because it can be thin with water. So yeah, I'm really happy. You have a close look at those results again. Really happy with how that looks. My favourite two, well, I've got three favourites, that one, and that one. I don't think I would chance this on your actual model, because it may not chip. But this will always chip, that will always chip, and it looks like the enamel's bloody gorgeous. So, but again, be careful with your satin finishes and your gloss finishes, because they won't absorb the water. So there we are. And even after, I mean, it feels fully dry, but I'll still be able to come in and chip it, because he says, well, it's not so easy. I would have thought it would be a lot easier than that. But if I wet it just slightly, look at that, it's that much easier. So probably, yeah, something I've probably learnt myself today as well, which I've never tried before. If you just damp the area, just with a damp brush, rather than wetting it, it makes it harder to work with. And the harder to work with, the easier it is to get the effect. If it all just keeps coming off every time you touch it, then that's no good at all. So there we are. Now, I said I was going to add something on to the end of this video. A lot of people ask, because sometimes I just say it like I assume you knew, like be careful with using this as paint because your oil washers will affect it or whatever. And I'm going to show you now what happens and the difference between acrylics and enamels. Now when we say acrylic, acrylic has become a very loosely used term. People use acrylic meaning it's not enamel. They'll say a lacquer paint. This is a lacquer paint, and some people say it's a lacquer acrylic. This is a lacquer acrylic. This, I think, is a true acrylic. The more the paint goes towards being water-based, the less tough it is, except for this one. This paint seems to be really tough, and if you thin this with this one and paint it, it is rock hard. If you're doing RC tanks and stuff, this is the stuff to use. It doesn't just rub off. XF13, XF paint, Tamiya, any colour XF, doesn't have to be 13, will come off quite easily. So, but when it comes to enamels, they're completely out there on their own. Enamel-based paints, they're completely on their own. But you've got to be careful when people say acrylics, okay? There's all the paints out there. MRP, Tamiya LP, Mr. Hobby. You've got... they're all calling themselves acrylics. You've got, I mean, there couldn't be two paints further away than Vallejo and MRP. One's a really strong lacquer paint, but it's called an acrylic. So, or a lacquer acrylic, I think they call it. Is it on the jar? Doodle-doodle-dum-dum-dum. Does it say lacquer acrylic on here? Acrylic lacquer, there you go. Acrylic lacquer paint for airbrush. It's not truly an acrylic. It's stuff like your AKs and that are, in my opinion. So, what's the difference? Okay, I've got some oil washes here. These are the Modeller's World oil washes, which you see me use all the time, and I absolutely love them. They're brilliant. They're really good. And what I've got here is an upturned Tamiya jar. I'm just going to put a drop in here. Okay, that was too much. And when I say to you about using washes and being careful, this is what I mean. So I've got an oil, an acrylic wash. Here we go again. This is an oil-based wash. It's called Oil Wash, as you can see. All right. I can put this on here, and you can see it chase around those panel lines. And when we do it over the chipping, it makes the chipping look even better. Look. See how that's sort of come to life now, that panel. And we've got the black line around it. Okay, and then what you generally do is come in with a cotton bud or something. Okay, you just wipe away the excess. Bearing in mind this is still damp from chipping, we may get a little bit of paint lifting, but I don't think we will. So just remove the excess like that. Let it dry and then rub over with a cloth or another cotton bud, and you'll end up with your black in all your panel lines. And I can do the same on here. I can do the same on here. I'll put some on here. And I'll put some on here. Okay? Just brush that out a bit, brush that out a bit. And the way to do a wash, if you want to, this video has nothing to do with washes, but you can just dab it on like you see, and it will run along the lines. And that's what gives you your panel lining, makes it all show up. Especially around those gun hatches, look. Okay, and you would use a finer brush than I'm using. If you haven't got one, it doesn't really matter. Just like that, and it will run around, as you can see. Alright, so, and we can do it on these hatches down here. As you can see, the chipping, it really brings the chip into life. So as I say, what we need to do then is remove the excess with a cotton bud. Just like so. Let it dry out, and then we'll be able to rub it off. If you don't want to stain the paint, use a clear coat, seal it in. Because if you just put a wash on the paint, you can see it's darkened the colour of that green there. When I rub over it, let's grab a piece of paper towel. In fact, it's better when you're doing things with washes, it's better to use a piece of old t-shirt material. As you can see, this one's been used. And rub it with that. It's better because you don't get all the bits of paper coming off. You can rub that, you see, and it just leaves the wash as like a stain on the paint, and it stays in all the grooves. This is black I'm using here. Okay, so again we can rub over there and remove it all just like so, and it just remains in the grooves. Now if you don't, you can see we've got this staining going on here on the paint. If you don't want that, just give it a clear coat. If you do want it, because it does add a really good worn used effect, as you can see, then just use it straight on the paint. Perhaps test a bit on your model first. Just rub that off. And do the same on here, just rub away the excess. That mixture colour doesn't seem to absorb it, but you can see it stayed in the panel lines. So there we are. And then with the enamel paint, you can just rub it off. Oh dear, what's happened there? Oh look, it's taken the paint off. And that is why, guys, I say you can't use oil-based products on enamel paints. Oil, enamel, they're pretty much one and the same. You can't use them. So don't put oil-based products on enamel paints. That's what happens. What you can do is go over it like with like an LP9 or X22 is it clear? Any clear gloss or whatever. Go over with that, or a flat. As long as it's an acrylic paint, you can put acrylics on top of enamels. You can put enamels on top of acrylics, but then you can't use a wash on an enamel. Okay, so if you're going to use washes, seal it in first with an acrylic lacquer or acrylic clear, and then you can do it. As you can see, none of these, I can rub these as hard as I like and nothing will happen. But that one, if I rub it as hard as I like, all the paint comes off. You can see I scratch it off with my fingernail, I expect. Okay, so bear that in mind. It's also, as you can see, it's gone right into the paint. You've got that really dark area. It just ruin your model. Just don't do it. Do not put oil washes on enamel paint. So there we go. We've covered chipping and we've covered a bit of washing. And you can see there, that wing, even if I say so myself, that looks bloody great, doesn't it? I around those panels on that. So really, really nice. So I have to strip this now and get it back to plastic so I could use it on the model. But there we go, guys. So that has been hairspray chipping and a little bit on washing, and using a wash for you. So hope you enjoyed that. Any questions, pop them down below. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please hit that square there, and that will get you subscribed to the channel. Hit the notifications bell and you'll get notified of when I put up another video. And very, very soon I will be starting the Hong Kong models. I forgot their name then, sorry Neil. The Hong Kong models A20 in 1/32 scale. It's a beautiful, beautiful kit. If you didn't see my video yesterday, I have now sent the nose leg off to Ali over at Aerocraft Models, and he is manufacturing a brass/bronze nose gear for it. And that is Aerocraft, www.aerocraftmodels.com if you want to look at his website. He's just built a new website, so the old web address doesn't work anymore. So that's that, and also I'm going to be starting this because I've got plain withdrawal symptom, and I want to get the Scammell and the Chieftain done before I crack on with that A20, so I need something just to tide me over for my fix, and this is a lovely little kit. So I'll be building that as well, and that's a nice little 1/72 scale, bish bash bosh, done. So thank you for watching. I'll see you all soon. Look out for part 12. As I say, I'm going to revisit the scribing video because that one I've done was rubbish. See you all soon. Bye bye.